just want a little. I smoke, yeah. Nigga, I burn the marijuana and they won't book me for that. See me on the streets, here they come, here they at. Stroll around the corner, hands in the hood with a gat. They won't book me for that. Won't bag me for that, huh? Undercovers come up to me, ask me for crack, not protect and to serve. That's provoking the act. They won't book me for that. They won't bag me for that. But the man in ties, they just look at me back. I burn the marijuana and they won't book me for that. Is it the rich that is mean or the ways that you stack? Or the pigmentation of his skin, he's black. Like they won't book me for that. They won't bag me for that. Ain't even speeding, I'm doing my limit. Can't be taxed, it's illegal. System structured, so you can't be rich. Got us breathing mustard. My brain's blue from the smoke. Ponics, human product. Illumines force light, they call simulate. The devil used man to try to make life, cause God wouldn't tell him, condemn him, fell him. God gave us the seed to reproduce till Mother Earth is full. So in the mean, I burn the marijuana and they won't book me for that. See me on the streets, here they come, here they at. Stroll around the corner, hands in the hood with the gats. They won't book me for that. Where the good people at? Motherfuckers come up to me, ask me for crack. Protect them to serve, that's provoking the act. They won't book me for that. They won't back me for that. But a man in ties, they just look at me back, cause they think I'm black. Nah, man. Bruh. Something like that.
Marijuana, yo, it calm me. I don't know why they always on me. On it in a king bomb me. If you stop us, we put it out calmly. Officer, where's your authority? To impede a national on her land or his seas. How I love the sense of me. Bonnet I tell, no grabber in my weed. We check out the stems and seeds. Rolling while I'm rolling, that's a regular tendency. Enough man beat the NSC, but me some bubba roots or some ganja tea. I take 2 draws for my enemies. Envious bad mind with the jealousy. But on the nothing we are the remedy. Chef in Zanga bits, we mastered the recipe. Watch this roll, yeah, it's a masterpiece. I don't care who sees, I burn my herb in the streets. The cushion bang is always on me. Few times the pussy them try swam me. Intelligent tone, I tell them calmly, I'm MIA, Moorish Imperial Army. Mind what you say, might rub me wrongly, matter in me eye. I bury and beef, me no even brush me teeth. Me want me some beef, me no get a split it bun, me get cranky.
Marijuana and they won't book me for that. See me on the streets, here they come, here they at. Stroll around the corner, hands in the hood with a gat. They won't book me for that. Won't bag me for that, huh? Undercovers come up to me, ask me for cracks, not protect and to serve. That's provoking the act. They won't book me for that. They won't back me for that. But the man in ties, they just look at me back. I burn the marijuana and they won't book me for that. Is it the rich that is mean or the ways that you stack? Or the pigmentation of his skin, he's black. Like they won't book me for that. Won't bag me for that.
Whew. Fuck me, that was intense.
Sounds like it's having a hallucinogenic effect. Not like a drug, which is harmful and wrong, and just say no, kids. But spacey nonetheless.
Have you ever heard or thought that you saw or felt the pain from third eye to your jaw? Felt schizo, brain circuit strip so got me seeing strobe lights like a disco. Under skin crawls, seeing one steak shapes out of the norm, demonic forms takes. Forces external, stress is extreme. Eyes wide open, though it's a dream. It seems sort of like alienation, surrounded by aliens at a PlayStation. Nerd impulses, feeling pulses on noses, suffering from tripped out psychosis. Doses, seeing clouds drip like ET, sun rays touch fingertips. Reflect kiss off your cheek like lips, repeating like skips. Peeling the air in strips, pattern swirl, walls seem to breathe. Mixed up senses that I can't perceive. All I see is sounds, I'm hearing what smells. I'm craving hallucinations like hell. Enter the realm where there's talking gazelles. Speaking metaphysic, I'm feeling depressed. Fez wearing horn note puts his hand on my chest and says, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out. All I did was have a piece of a shroom. My mind going zoom as I spin with this room. Forks run with spoons, knives guilty for murders they committed. Should I be committed to a mental ward? Straight jacket fitted. Frog walks out the wall talking ribbit. I'm overstanding every word said in my head. Then here comes death, smelling like dead, telling me to follow him flying on fog. On his death log he checks off guard. Looking into his hood, darkness all I see, and darkness is all around me. Light asks me to take a west sound beat, then introduce me to speed of thought, and she told me by being told man knows not. Carrying on, swinging like Barry Bonds. The flower bouquet from whence he married yawns. Rapper's frost was a corpse. Power and force, divorced of course. Power is an illusion, took the bigger loss. My last 4 blinks felt like ice rinks. Came to my senses looking down sinks. After that I didn't know what to think, so I just put the rest of shrooms into my drink. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out. The trip is a trip.
Peace, Islam. Here we are once again. Breathe in, breathe out.
That's a hard intro, man.
The trip is a trip. The trip is a trip.
Hard intro.
Peace, War. The floor is all yours. Are we starting up with your screen share?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Can y'all see that? Cool, Joe.
Yeah.
You can see that?
Yeah. Novo.
All right.
Novo Nordisk.
All right. All right, man. Yeah.
Islam.
Everybody, man. Thanks again for another coming to another class. Always a pleasure to spend time with y'all. You know, feels like we're close, even though we're miles away. Today's lesson plan. This is just sort of a recap of last day, but lesson plan today, and we're gonna just jump in because, as y'all know, the questions at the end are actually the most important part. They're more important than the presentation, in my opinion, anyway. And it takes long enough to get through these slides. You know, I'm rambling on, and there's a lot to explain. I'm a sort of a wordy style with my PowerPoint slides, so I want to just dive right in, so that way I'm not wasting any precious time and taking away from the things that we can all discuss today. So lesson plan for today is basically looking at the chemistry of primarily psilocybin. If we have time, which we probably won't, but if we have time after the chemistry section, then we'll take a dive into some of the religious stuff, the Torah Tanakh specifically, and begin looking at how this stuff applies, how Islamism applies, just like Noble Drew Ali said it would, by honoring all prophets. Islam, too, system today. Islam also honors all prophets for the most part, of which Isa was one of the greats, of course. And it's, that's probably a tradition that carried over from its more, I would say, Sufi-like or mystic origins, is honoring all prophets. So we're going to take a look at this whole curriculum. We're going to take a look at the different scriptures across the works of the different prophets and the books that relate to all the different prophets, from Rama in the Hindustan paradigm, all the way to, of course, Yeshua and Muhammad and all that stuff. We'll look at some of the scriptural presence of Islamism as we're looking at it today, Islamism as the old time religion, which we looked at last class and learned that it really dealt with the natural world, the sort of information that is encoded into the natural world that we use more science to decode, right? To receive the information. And of course, this class today is more science at the highest sense because it's dealing directly with some of the stuff that were the biggest influence on the lives of our direct ancestors in terms of our nation, right? Our nationality being Moorish American, being Moorish, and being, of course, that we are all students of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. We know the importance of Kemet or Egypt on both sides of the Atlantic. So this is really important part of Moorish science, looking at the chemistry of things, because not only do we found the universities that dealt with this stuff, but our ancestors, even before them in the grasslands, were dealing with this high-level chemistry just in the natural world. So we're going to talk about that today. And unlike last day, we just looked at the symbolism that proves that entheogens, psilocybin in particular, were key and really pertinent to our ancestor civilizations. And today we're going to look more at why that is. What actually is it? What is the material makeup of the entity? Because the truth is, we don't really know what it is. Still, our ancestors were closer to understanding it than we were, but there is no comprehending it really, and that's why we have today's religions, because as good of a system as traditional or modern day Islam is, it's still a system in the sense that they're dealing with methods of describing, of articulating an experience that the prophets would have had, communing with Allah one-on-one and receiving information from his messengers 1v1, and ascribing words that are on a page in the Quran and then spoken by the imam or whoever speaking in any religion to give the congregation or the people insight into these stories, but they don't actually put the people inside of the stories themselves, right? That's the difference between the esoteric and exoteric. We're dealing with being inside the actual stories that are told about the deities, whether it be the Ramayana, whether it be in the Quran, the green one, whether Gabriel, Raphael, whatever, Michael, Lucifer, whatever you want to name, right? Job, Ruth, all of them, Daniel, anybody. We're dealing with the actual experience of those stories with this particular discussion. So we want to look at where in the scriptures is Islamism present, the old form of Islamism present, because it's in there. It's in there in lots of passages that allude to these powerful substances and entheogens that we're still trying to figure out because we don't know what they are. You know, you'll take a high dose of psilocybin and you'll be like, you won't. It's the fact that a mushroom can do this doesn't really. It's still beyond comprehension. And lastly, what I really want to touch on today is the importance of not following a religion just because we were born into it. You know, our culture, Moorish culture, is to study. That's what it means to be Moorish, right? It's a culture of study, always has been. But most people are born into a religion. You know, it just becomes another computer program that they can't really see beyond. They follow it for cultural reasons. They follow it because their parents did, and their parents did, and their parents did before them. They don't follow the religion because they chose it based on their study of it. They're not, and because of that reason, they're not comfortable with narratives that push against their religion, of course, because they feel that they're all very different and their cognitive dissonance gets in the way. But we want to be comfortable with cognitive dissonance when we're wrong about something, but also to be able to explain in detail why we believe that we are right. And today is sort of the chemical scientific breakdown of why Islamism is as enduring as it is, and why it is the original old-time religion that permeates all others and is the origin of all others. We want to be able to talk about that with people at length when these conversations come up, because they're going to come up. And so last day was just, this is a recap of last looking at symbols. And the reason I picked this particular one was just to demonstrate the plethora of ways that our ancestors' symbology is present in today's modern world. I mean, it's like it never left, you know, just as real as it ever was. And in all facets of entertainment and pop culture, it's still real. And religion, it's still, there's that symbol is enduring, right? Our the early discoveries of our ancestors with the old-time religions are still enduring to this day, right down to the last movie that just came out. So I wanted to use this as a recap of last day, because this is just one of the symbols of the many that we looked at, and all of them operate today as enduringly as they ever have. That's what last this was about, in case y'all missed that one. And another recap. There we get into the real stuff behind neurotheology and theoneurology, right? Remember, spiritual experiences, mystical experiences, Islamism, the esoteric, Islamism, practice, the mystical practice of Islamism, sugared by chemicals, right? It's a chemical phenomenon, because all reality is essentially a chemical phenomenon. If we look at how the brain interprets reality and information, right? Electrical signals, that sort of stuff. It's all a chemical phenomenon. But particularly exogenous forms of it, so outside forms, and endogenous forms of it are what are responsible for the many, many different instances of mystical experiences that we've all had, whether they're being the scriptures or private. But also, entities from transcendent realms can use this chemical phenomenon to communicate with us via the brain. And we're going to explore how that could be possible today. So yeah, I love this little photo gallery, I guess, because you got a lot of stuff here. The eye of Ra, which is essentially one of the symbols for the mushroom that we talked about the other day. The chemical structure of dimethyltryptamine, right? 12 carbohydrate, 16 hydrogen, 2 nitrogen. The shape, the coincidence of the shape of the eye of Ra with a certain part of the brain. And of course, some of the made to netter forms, M and R, M-E-R, M-A-R, M-O-R being more, the origin of more, because of the writing of more, what it is. There's Peru, we can assume, or some form of entity representing division. But anyway, R, right? And of course, our boy Drake, OVO. Don't forget, man, what does he know that he's not telling us about? Because, I mean, I don't know if you can make that up. I mean, it's a little too specific for me to say that the guy who drew this knew absolutely nothing about this. That's what I call fishy, you know. Anyway, let's move on from that.
Have you ever had a dream that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream and the real? This can be what? Be real.
It's going into replication.
Hey, Bob, still nothing. Let's go. Let's go. Tank, we're going to need a signal soon.
Got a fibrillation.
APOC, location. Targeting almost there.
It's going into arrest.
Lock, I got him. Now, Tank, now.
All right, so there's a lot to analyze in that scene. All right, there's a lot to look at there. So let's just go back and debunk it a little bit. Deconstruct it a little bit, so I can talk about why it is that I wanted to include that in this class today. Okay, because this is, to me, the most accurate depiction of my first personal experience on a high dose excursion, if you will. And I think this is probably the case for many people, which is that first, and we'll take a look in a moment at the blue pill, red pill thing, but first, the environment begins to change in very subtle ways, and then it begins to change in ways that aren't so subtle. And you might try to reach out and touch a wall or something, because all of a sudden you realize that it's not really a wall. It's a bunch of atoms that came together, a bunch of shapes that came together to present itself as a wall. But then you realize, as you digest the entheogen, that it's not really a wall, though. And Neil realized it's not really a mirror. So he reaches out for it, right? He reaches out and discovers that it's not really a mirror. Well, what is it? It begins to consume him.
How would you know the difference between the dream?
He can't tell anymore what's going on, where he is. He didn't even fall asleep. He was just sitting down. He looked at the mirror. All of a sudden, it wasn't there really a mirror anymore. Reaches out to touch it, and now he's not sure where he is. And so he doesn't know what's real and what's not, because to him, he's sitting down just like he was. Moving on, after a while, after some discomfort, we'll say, they're dramatizing things here a little bit. But here it is.
Location, targeting almost there.
All right. Moving on. And boom, that's it. Down the rabbit hole that we talked about. He screams as he ends up being pulled down the rabbit hole.
Oh, pardon the interjection. The
No doubt.
the part right before that.
Yes.
When Tank was pulling him, was trying to find them.
Yes.
And they showed a green thing. It looked like the mushroom stem.
Ooh. See, that's why we do these classes, man. Because people have really, really good eyes for this stuff, much better than myself. So I looked at that. I thought to myself, well, that's just a digital image of the rabbit hole. But you're right. There's more than that going on. Let's take a look at it. They flash it real quick, so you got to catch it at the right moment.
It's going into replication.
Tank, we're going to need a signal soon.
Got a fibrillation.
ACOG, location. Targeting almost there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could probably pause that real quick. Yeah.
And then,
right.
And the dark is actually the cap, the mushroom cap.
Exactly. The cap and the stem, right? And sometimes, of course, they grow in a sort of weird, they're not straight, right? You know, they kind of grow sometimes in a sort of funnel-like upward way. And I mean, yeah, it's a stem and a cap. It's pretty obvious. You even have the sort of the rays in the spore print, rays of the sun, quote unquote, sort of pushing up from the center towards the edge. You can even see that, right? And this might be something more akin to what you would actually see yourself being pulled into. Like black, like if you were to leave, you know, reality, Earth, the planet is like reality generated in a bubble, right? It's like an atmosphere. It's like an encased little bubble with an atmosphere that protects it from other things, and reality exists in that bubble. Outside of it, reality couldn't exist out there. The planet's reality couldn't exist out there. So it's in a little bubble. And this is sort of what you feel like sometimes you're pulled out of that bubble. But it almost feels like going within as opposed to going without, but it's the same. And so, yeah, that point moves on. Thanks for that, Cujo. That's actually a really good look. This goes on, and then he wakes up for the first time. And it's very psychologically challenging. You see, now an experience like that, would that not be psychologically challenging? Would that not take self-mastery, not to flip out? It takes a lot, right? It takes a lot of self-control to stay calm in the situation. If you remember, Neo actually drops to the ground and throws up, right? So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about when I say the rabbit hole and self-mastery, because that's what it's like. It's like you wake up for the first time and you realize that you weren't really alive before. Or you are really alive, but you also live somewhere else at the same time. It's sort of that challenge the first time. It's a very, very real experience, very, very challenging experience to have to accept the nature of a reality that you had created, and now you're in this other one that's realer than the one before, but it's totally foreign to you. That is sort of what we're dealing with here, and that's why I thought it'd be cool to show this, because it's sort of very similar to this experience. I think that's what she was getting at. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I was cheeky, you know, like I tend to be cheeky with these images because I just think they're so bait. I mean, so this is Morpheus, red pill, blue pill. We would say Amanita muscaria and psilocybin. Psilocybin mushroom is blue, right? It's like, which one are you going to take? Be a slave to the illusion or become a slave to reality? When, who knows? The two are interchangeable is the point. And I drew this halo. This is not part of the artwork, by the way. I just drew this because I thought it was funny, because everything else about this picture is exactly the same. Right? Look at this. Here again, we look at this picture of some of the artwork on the temples, the Fire Temple and Avatar, The Last Airbender. Here's a picture of Yeshua and some of the old Christian art that depicts him in the sort of quote unquote mushroom position, right? With the hands, with the stems out, right? The little mushrooms going out on the side, the little stems, and this cap and the actual stem here. And look at this. I mean, is it different or is it the same thing? We have to start asking ourselves, how many ways can they show us the same thing and we just don't pay attention to it? This is, to me, the exact same picture. Anyway, that's why I wanted to show that, to demonstrate that Our stories being told to us all the time. And I guarantee you that this woman, the woman who made this movie, I think the Terminator was actually a prequel to the Matrix in terms of, or the sequel to the Matrix, or whatever it is, in terms of what happened with humanity, right? Machines take over, then humanity rises. So I think those movies are actually done together. But these are her stories. She's in Moore's womb. These are her stories. It ain't a coincidence. I also found this clip on Instagram a little while ago. Look at this picture. I'll stop talking. You know what? I'll shut up. You just watch it. You just watch this. So this is a very realistic, low-dose depiction of what psilocybin will do to you, right? See the environment changes. However, at the high doses, not only do the environments change, but they become interactive. You can go into these places, and they have much. Oh yeah, like that. They have much less subtle transformations that then, of course, you can either look at and sort of like survey as a spectator, basically, like voyeurism as you're going through, or you can hop off the train and take a look yourself, or you might get thrown out of the train and have to find your way back, which can be, it's some sort of daunting, terrifying thing. But this is what the low doses are like, when you begin to realize, oh shit, what's going on? And sometimes, of course, the environment will change so much that those walls change a bit later on. Over here, you just like Neo, you can put your hand through, right through, and you don't know because you feel like you're still in the same room that you're in at a low dose, of course, and you don't understand how you can now put your hand through something or perceive to put your hand through something. It's all brain chemistry. So what your brain is determining is real or not. Who knows if it's all brain chemistry, then who's to say what's real and what's not? Who's to say, man? So we're going to look at some of the actual research now. I like this picture from last time. I thought it was pretty hilarious because, this is Lord of the Rings. You guys know Lord of the Rings, Legolas the elf. And I put a link to, I can actually pull out of this, get to, I think this better. I can actually look at the notes at the bottom. So this is a link to one of the papers that talks about some of the encounters that people have on entheogens, DMT in particular, usually an inhaled version of DMT or something like that. And, they're very revealing, very interesting. I can forward all these papers to you guys if you want. We're going to look at some of them in depth in a moment, this one in particular. And these, of course, these are all peer-reviewed research papers. And they primarily look at summarizing the similarities across the experiences of DMT. Similarities that make it as close to impossible as they're willing to say that the experiences are hallucinations. Because you can't all hallucinate the same thing. If you're going to hallucinate, it's going to be specific to you. The fact that a lot of these entities are shared amongst people, well, then they begin to think maybe they're not hallucinations and they're not sure. Anyway, that's what the research is looking at. This is a paper, this is obviously recent, right? 2020. So these are like new papers, but they're also old ones. All right, so we're gonna get a bit boring for a second. I'm gonna read some of this stuff to you. This is from the paper we just looked at a moment ago. And then we have another one looking at a different paper. So when administered via intravenous injection or inhalation, DMT has a very rapid onset and short duration of action, with peak effects occurring within 5 minutes and resolving within 30 minutes due to its rapid metabolism. So it hits you pretty fast, pretty hard. especially when it's inhaled or injection. Mushrooms are different. Mushrooms are different. When taken orally with a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, and we're going to talk about this, is what makes psilocybin so special. When taken orally with a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, as prepared in the plant admixture ayahuasca, the onset of effects is delayed and the duration may be several hours or even longer. Similar to other classic psychedelics, DMT is a Schedule 1 compound. Obviously, we know that's changing in other places now. Here's another piece from the paper. It's been speculated that due to the endogenous presence, or the presence that we have in our own brains, of DMT in the mammalian brain, including humans, DMT may play a role in a variety of non-ordinary states of consciousness, such as dreaming, psychosis, spiritual experiences, encounters with non-human intelligence, alien and UFO encounters, extrasensory perception, out-of-body experiences, and near-death experiences. However, it is not clear that DMT occurs endogenously in sufficient concentrations to produce pharmacological effects. So this is what we spoke about in our first class when I think someone asked the question, can you get to these states without, without the entheogen's help? The question is, yes, you can. But the brain does not produce enough of the substances unless it's under extreme situations of stress, probably like starvation, right? So 4 days, 4 nights of fasting, right? Near-death experiences, basically, is what I'm saying. We don't produce it. We can dream it and have the experience for a short period of time. But it's not to the same extent or for long durations of time that occur when you have the experience from the endogenous natural world, you know? And that doesn't make it a drug in the sense that we use the word drugs, because we're physical beings, we need physical things. Without food, food's exogenous. Without food, you die. Tryptophan, which is the essential amino acid that's the basis of DMT, basically. Tryptophan is essential. You can't get it. Your body doesn't produce it. You have to get it from outside sources. If you don't drink water, you die. If you don't breathe the air, you die. Exogenous sources aren't necessarily drugs. Just because you don't produce it yourself, we're physical beings. We need physical substances to support our physical bodies. And so, yes, DMT is real because it ties us back to the source, and it can give us the experience of being back in touch with that source every night when we go to sleep or when it's time for us to pass. But in terms of what we've been able to accomplish here as human beings, that came into play with the exact exogenous replicas of what we already endogenously produce being found in nature. Engineered for our use, I will add. By who? That's what we're trying to figure out. That's what we're trying to figure out. How far back do we have to go? How many universes back was it engineered for our use one day?
Peace, Mark.
Oh, Islam.
Just a quick comment. Just so you're aware, the Matrix video is copyrighted, so it caused a glitch in the YouTube. So if you have anything to show, make sure it's not like movie stuff or whatever.
You know what you can do? What I can do next time is just you just MP4 it, man.
Yeah, you could do.
You just MP4 it. Yeah. So but at the time we played it, we saw it, right? Did you guys see it too?
Yeah, we saw it on here, but I think on the YouTube stream it's gonna be cut out or something. That little section. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll know moving forward not to do that, man. Islam, appreciate it, bro.
So.
Yeah. So moving on with the next part of the paper, which says that although there are numerous anecdotal reports of vaporized or smoked DMT use, empirical research detailing prevalence, patterns of use, and other characteristics of such DMT use is scarce. A structured, qualitative, thematic analysis of DMT effects in 19 self-selected users revealed 9 themes of the DMT experience, including hallucinations, lucidity, affective distortions, ineffability, extreme intensity, spirituality, distortion in sense of space, time, and self, a sense of familiarity, and reports of entering other realities that were sometimes inhabited by other sentient beings. So it's common for people to express experiences. And in some of these research papers, the individuals in question, the subjects, when they're asked lots of things, but one of the things they're asked is, well, was a hallucination? And the vast majority of them say no. We don't know what it was. It wasn't a hallucination. It was some sort of information being received from a real entity that we could look at, that was practical and real information that applies. It wasn't a hallucination. They don't know what it was, but it's a very common theme throughout that these beings are encountered. And we're going to get to the next paper, some of the specifics of what these beings are, and then you're just going to think back to all the fairy tales you ever heard in your life, all the mythology you ever heard in your life of all these quote unquote primitive cultures, and it's like pulled. That stuff must have been pulled right out of the DMT experience, which we'll get to that stuff in a second. One recent study provided detailed descriptions of experiences of 606 individuals who reported experiences of an encounter with God, ultimate reality, higher power, or an emissary of God, like the angels, right? Raphael, Uriel, Michael, Gabriel, or emissary of God after using smoked or vaporized DMT. And lastly, amongst the most vivid, intriguing, memorable, and sometimes disconcerting experiences that people report after taking a high dose of inhaled or intravenous DMT are those of encountering seemingly autonomous entities or beings. That's one of the most common things, most vivid things, most memorable things. Of course it would be. Although description of the nature of the entities, details of the experiences, and meaning attributed to the experiences vary widely, such experiences are apparently not infrequent. Strassman, which is one of the scientists who we spoke about before with the neuro-theology debate, right, Rick Strassman, estimated that at least half of the participants in his studies of high doses of intravenous DMT reported experiences of journeys to invisible or alternative worlds, and that contact with alien beings or entities were a variant of this category. So these are all peer-reviewed papers. You guys look them up. These are the things that happen with people when they are recruited into these trials, and they're never the same after. The people are never the same after, and they talk about how it changes their perspective and their approach to life. It's pretty crazy. And this research has been going on for a long time. So I'm just going to talk about some of the common encounters. Encounters with an archetypal feminine entity were most frequent. There's no Allah is feminine, the word itself, and we have a lot of feminine words for deities. They played an important role in our ancestors' mythology and deity structures, right? And spiritual paradigms. The women did. Encounters with an archetypal feminine entity were most frequent and included a goddess or feminine deity, Gaia, Mother Ayahuasca, or Mother Nature, and a female entity or feminine presence not otherwise specified. Most common thing. Next most common entity were that of deities, divine beings, and demigods, which were encountered in 293 experiences. Most frequently identified were the devil, Satan, demons, or death-type entities, followed by God. Hindu deities, Buddhist deities, and ancient Egyptian deities were encountered in 40 experiences, respectively. Angels or seraphim. If you remember, we talked about mushroom spores and seraphim, and the word seraphim, and the etymology of seraphim to mean the flying serpent, or it burned, or the fire, something that came from the sky, right? And of course, that is one of the common things that people see on these experiences, as well as Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. Aliens, celestial beings, and extraterrestrials were encountered in 281 experiences. Included within this thematic phenotype were beings made of light or energy and jeweled beings. One of the most prominent concepts in chemetic science is the concept of beings of light. That we built the pyramids after witnessing pyramids made of light and transferring that to the physical realm when our journeys ended, because we could still see them. We could see the structure. It's like a painter, right? You know, these great, or a sculptor, more specifically, take a block of stone, and they don't create Michelangelo out of the stone. They chisel pieces away until the actual art that they want is revealed from out of the stone. It was always there, and that's sort of how building some of these architectural feats took place, based on the geometric things that we saw made of light on these high-dose psilocybin trips, right? Geometric, fractal, or hyperdimensional entities and aliens or celestial beings. Animal-based and creature-based entities were reported in some of the studies as well, encompassing reptilian or serpentine entities, insectoid entities. How often have we heard about the insectoids and reptilians and seen images of them drawn throughout different temples and structures? And we say, well, they must have been here, because why the hell would people draw them if they weren't here? Well, maybe they were here, or maybe they were encountered elsewhere. Maybe they were real to us, gave us information, we learned from them, and they were our deities. Maybe we served them. But maybe they were hyperdimensional, meaning that we only encountered them when we were in these high dose states where our brain chemistry allowed communication. And of course, when we woke up, we did their will, right? Mythological beings were described in 144 experiences. Machine elves, also common. Fairies, sprites, nymphs, spirits, giants, trolls, gnomes, imps, goblins, chimeras, hybrids, dragons, witches, wizards. You got to think to yourself. All these things are from old stories that were around centuries, if not millennia, before we were born. But they ain't as old as ingesting entheogens. Ingesting entheogens is way older than all the stories and fairy tales that we have today dealing with these different entities. Where do they come from? One day, some guy just was sitting down and just saw in his mind a picture of a troll, just out of nowhere. He's sitting there eating some cashews from the tree, biting into an orange, and he just thinks, oh, I'm going to make a story about trolls. I'm going to draw a troll. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
FYI, I'm eating cashews right now. Just
oh man, yeah, that's weird. I don't know if you see. I don't know if you can make up this stuff that happens with us in the questions asked in these classes. I did not know Cujo was eating cashews. It just happens to be the case, man. NDA is the GOAT. That's all I can say. But yeah. So he's just sitting there, like Cujo always eating cashews, just chilling. And all of a sudden, he's thinking about chimeras and pterianthropes and nymphs and fairies. He just imagines them out of the blue, insectoids out of the blue. That doesn't make any sense. Something caused a change in our creative faculties that put these dragons, that put these things into our minds. And then, of course, we took it and went off running with these concepts like anything else. Our environment didn't have room for this stuff. We were running around just trying to survive most of the time, collecting food. We weren't reading, we weren't writing. It's not the stuff we were doing. And we're going to talk a bit about dreams later. And people might say, well, maybe we met these things that we saw them dreaming. We'll talk about dreams later in another research paper, looking at the difference between the dream world and reality and the things that construct dreams. Dreams don't work like that. They're based on input. And we weren't in an environment to have any sort of input to create dragons or trolls, or gnomes or insectoids. Something happened. Something went down. We could go on this forever. Let's move on to this paper. Building Alien Words. The Neuro-theological and evolutionary implication of the astonishing psychoactive effects of DMT. Psilocybin. Psilocybin, we'll get to the chemistry in a moment. Psilocybin is psilocin, and psilocin is the ingestible form of DMT. Psilocin is what happens when we ingest psilocybin, and then we'll talk about what happens inside of our chemically, what happens inside of our bodies to give us the experience in a few slides from now. So let's get through this paper, man, because this one's cool. Psilocybin experience, a hallucination or a visual auditory radio. Suffice to say that the principal difference between the waking consensus world and the dream world is the manner in which the former is modulated by extrinsic sensory data. Rick Strassman distinguishes between two alternate explanations of the DMT flash. First, that the DMT experience is generated by the brain. The alternative is that DMT changes the receiving capabilities of the brain such that it can receive sensory data from a normally unseen reality. Struggling to explain the alien worlds visited under DMT, it might be time to consider that what many scientists might consider unthinkable, that the DMT worlds built by the brain are modulated by extrinsic data from outside the brain, analogous to the manner in which the consensus world is modulated by sensory input from the outside world. So in other words, the world that we all agree on that exists, I'm sitting here, I'm talking to y'all, and y'all sitting there listening to me talk, is modulated by, of course, the input that we receive from the world. The chair that I'm sitting on, the table my laptop is on, the chair y'all sitting on, the camera that y'all can see, that feeds into our general agreement about this world, the consensus world. The postulation about DMT is that the DMT world is built on data coming into the brain from somewhere else. It's because it's the only way to explain the experiences, because they're so foreign and unrelated to this consensus reality that we have right now. They can't be, the DMT world can't be based on this one, is what the point he's trying to make is. This would explain the striking parallels and similarities among users and is in line with the many individuals convinced of DMT's ability to transport the user to an alternate reality. However, this idea begs a question as to the form of such an external modulation could take. How does the brain receive data from an alternate reality? Speculators have suggested that DMT somehow tunes the brain to receive channel DMT. This is a paper from Hancock and Strassman. Two research papers, check those ones out, they're cool too. The idea being that the brain is capable of receiving sensory input from different realities depending on precise neurochemically defined states, in the same way a radio receives data from different radio stations depending on its tuning. This is an intuitively appealing idea. However, there was no suggestion as to how this tuning would occur to allow the brain to access this alternate data field. Eddie Frexsa speculates that DMT allows access to a non-local realm where the entities reside. Okay, coming to a close on that paper. The paradigm of modern materialistic neuroscience fails to provide a straightforward explanation for DMT's remarkable effect on human consciousness, because it's specific to us. Other entities enjoy DMT too, but the things that it shows us are specific to us, as far as we can tell. Our current understanding of the action of hallucinogens appears sufficient to explain many of the effects of classic psychedelics. So most hallucinogens and their understanding of their action of them explain the effects of classic psychedelics, like acid, for example, but not DMT. DMT seems exceptional and is more difficult to account for. This simple molecule has an extraordinary ability to rapidly fire the user into an unimaginably strange alien reality and then return them within a few minutes, shocked and shaken, but unharmed. The worlds DMT users find themselves in are completely unlike the dream world, bear no apparent relationship to consensus reality, and yet possess commonalities that are difficult to explain, unless they are modulated by an extrinsic sensory component of an unknown nature or are expressions of autonomous structures within the collective unconscious. Woo! Allah, the collective unconscious, right? The one consciousness that we are all tied into, the one reality. The brain's thalamocortical system learned to construct consensus reality throughout evolution, development, and experience. And it seems likely that it must have also learned to construct alien worlds that appear when DMT floods the brain. This suggests that this simple tryptamine has a long-standing relationship with the brain, a conclusion supported by a number of pharmacological peculiarities unique to DMT. Of course, DMT itself contains none of the information that constitutes the experience. No alien landscapes, no entities, no hidden worlds. That is the molecule itself. It's just like any other molecule. As far as we know, it doesn't contain any particular thing that other atoms don't. However, DMT may allow the expression of intrinsic thalamocortical activation patterns that developed in a world that is not so much alien, but from which we have become alienated, allowing us a brief but astonishing glimpse at a long-forgotten hyperdimensional heritage. Talk about unalienable rights, right? Right? Unalienable rights, right? Being unalienated. Birthrights that belong to us because they developed in a world that is not so much alien, but from which we have become alienated over the course of our evolution. As he says here, allowing us a brief but astonishing glimpse at a long-forgotten hyperdimensional heritage. Thanks to the curiosity of a small but growing number of individuals, this heritage is now being rediscovered and explored. Surely this can only be a good thing. DMT may be one of the most powerful tools for understanding consciousness and the nature of reality bestowed on the human species and ought to be treated as such. As Terence McKenna was so keen to point out, DMT is not a secret, it is the secret. Perhaps he was right. So I'm just, of course, I am happy to share all these papers with you guys, but the point of me, we're going to get to some of the chemistry now, the actual molecular chemistry. But I just wanted to show these papers and this one as well to demonstrate that it is long, it's not just our ancestors who knew about this stuff. It has been long known in the academic community that DMT is a special, unique substance that no one can figure out. Something about it, something about the entheogenic entities into which it's incorporated, like the toad venom and the psilocybin mushroom, are unique to humans and are responsible for taking us outside of our five sense reality, and are actually probably so familiar to us that we can't even remember them because it's intrinsic. The worlds that we experience are intrinsic to our evolution. They're where we come from, is essentially what they're saying in this research paper. They're not alien worlds. They're just worlds that we forgot about, worlds that we came from long ago, worlds where consciousness originated, because we still don't know what consciousness is. Many academics still don't agree that the brain is the source of consciousness. We don't know what it is. Okay, so this is just to clear up some of the common conceptions about the pineal gland, right? Because the pineal gland, we hear lots of things about the pineal gland, right? The third eye, the pine cone. It's often cited as the place where we receive information, where we receive light, the crown of our chakras. There's a lot of mythology associated with the pineal gland, especially across the conscious community. And the pineal gland does produce some of the, what you would say, sort of the text or the transcript or the written codes that DNA uses to produce the molecules, which then produce the experience. The pineal gland does have a lot of that stuff in it, but it actually has very little to do in terms of the research with creating DMT itself. Very, very small amounts, if any, DMT are created by the pineal gland. That's not what makes the pineal gland special. The pineal gland is made special for a different reason, which is related to DMT production, but not because it is the source of DMT itself. We do have DMT in the brain endogenously, but the pineal gland is not the source. Now, scientists are sort of confused by this because they think to themselves, well, we found all the things INMT and AADC primarily, which are transcripts, mRNA transcripts, which produce DMT, and we found these two transcripts, INMT and AADC, in the pineal gland in pretty big number. But for some reason, even that's the case, we don't understand why the pineal gland doesn't seem to be the source then. So what is that makes it so special? At this point, it is uncertain to what extent, if any, the pineal contributes to DMT production. So we're not sure what it is, but we're going to look next at the chemical stuff, and we're going to talk about why the pineal gland is important to DMT production, even though it itself is responsible for producing other tryptamines, but not exactly DMT. But what couple things that were cool here, I'm taking away, is that DMT concentrations following cardiac arrest, this is in my cell, DMT concentrations following cardiac arrest increase significantly over baseline. And the INMT protein, which is a transcript that makes DMT, one of them that's responsible for producing DMT, was also found in monkey pineal glands. And the study expanded this finding and demonstrated an abundant expression of INMT mRNA in the pineal gland in both rats and humans. So we do produce it, not so much by the pineal gland, and it does increase significantly at death. Okay, so I'm going to just zoom out a little bit here. All right, so chemically speaking, tryptophan. Tryptophan is just an amino acid. An amino acid is basically the stuff that makes up a protein, right? Protein, chicken, fish, nuts, legumes, protein. Protein is made out of amino acids. If you break a protein down, you see amino acids. The way that they're arranged is what determines what protein you get. And there are about 22, 24 amino acids. Tryptophan is one of them. Tryptophan is an amino acid that is polymerized into serotonin and the melatonin at nighttime. So when it gets dark, you produce melatonin. That's because tryptophan kickstarts that cascade, right? Tryptophan is converted to serotonin, and serotonin is then converted to melatonin as it gets dark outside and as you sleep. That's what helps you to sleep. But there are certain chemical reactions which stop there. So tryptophan doesn't get a chance to become DMT. There are a couple ways that this happens. Tryptophan can go either right over here in this column and follow this pathway where its interaction with AADC turns into a tryptamine, and that interaction with INMT, right, that we just talked about over here, turns it into a methyltryptamine, and then that interaction with INMT again turns it into DMT. Tryptophan doesn't seem to like this pathway too much. It very, very rarely ever happens. Normally, tryptophan is much more comfortable going this way. It has a very high affinity to this pathway and the enzymes in this pathway. This enzyme attached to this guy, it's like botine bench. Rarely does it go this way. Even if it goes this way, it is often stopped and reconverted back this way on its route to DMT. So here, tryptophan usually goes in through this enzyme, becoming this, right? Hydroxytryptophan, right? 5-hydroxytryptophan. Then that meets AADC, that becomes serotonin. Serotonin eventually becomes melatonin. And sometimes it continues on, right? It can go this way, where the AADC meets the INMT that we talked about over here, and that turns into a DMT. But usually it doesn't go this way or this way. Very, very rarely. Usually it goes this way. That's where it stops. So this is just looking again at the strangeness of tryptophan rarely taking this pathway to the right. The extensive colocalization of INMT and AADC transcripts in pinealocytes and the apparent lack of the pineal's contribution to the brain production of DMT present a paradox. We reason that there may be two competing pathways for tryptophan in the pineal. One, the conversion of tryptophan to 5-HT or serotonin, so going this way, right? Tryptophan becoming serotonin, which is right here, right? 5-HT, where the arrow is. And two, the potential conversion of tryptophan to DMT is the other one. So they're competing. But it's plausible in the pineal, the first pathway, which is this one going left, is overwhelmingly dominant, resulting in high production of serotonin at the expense of DMT. The established properties of the enzyme support this. The affinity of tryptophan for serotonin, so going this way, is substantially higher compared to the reported affinity of tryptophan for AADC, which leads to the DMT stuff. So the point is, pineal gland could produce DMT, but doesn't really, because tryptophan doesn't like it. It prefers to go this way. But the pineal gland has other things that it does. And that's what makes the pineal gland so special. Tryptophan to serotonin. Tryptophan to serotonin. Serotonin can be broken down at this point by monoamine oxidase. Monoamine oxidase is very prevalent in the gut, especially we digest foods, and also where serotonin is made. Most serotonin is made in the gut. Monoamine oxidase is also in the stomach and other places, other cells in the body. Monoamine oxidase's job is to break down tryptamines. So it's monoamine oxidase basically takes anything that tryptophan makes and breaks it down, stops it from going further. It controls the production of these neurotransmitters because if we're awake, we're not functioning well. It's not conducive to fight or flight. It's not conducive to being prepared for physical reality, to always be in this state where our brains and bodies are allowing tryptophan to become DMT. Because DMT, when you're on DMT, when you experience DMT, you're vulnerable. You can't live normally. You're on the ground. You're vulnerable. So and also we sleep forever. So it's not conducive to life not to have MAO. So MAO disrupts the things that tryptophan becomes. So it becomes serotonin, MAO might destroy that into byproducts. However, the pineal gland secretes special substances. The pineal gland secretes inhibiting compounds, harmaline, harmine, and pinealine. And those things stop the MAO from breaking down tryptophan. That's what's so special about the pineal gland. It produces the things which allow tryptophan to become DMT. The pineal gland produces the substances that stop the breakdown of tryptamine, that stop the breakdown of DMT production, which is monoamine oxidase. The pineal gland stops it by what it produces. So that way, the pineal gland produces this stuff, boom. Now serotonin can keep going. Now it becomes melatonin. In the same way, melatonin will be converted to pinealine. In the pineal gland, this loop happens, right? Pineal gland, pinealine, melatonin, pinealine, it just stays in this loop, being controlled by this enzyme. But when the pineal gland is uncalcified, it can produce enough of this stuff to stop this enzyme from converting it to pinealine or back to pinealine, and melatonin continues on. And it becomes now 5-MeO tryptophan. And taking 5-MeO DMT itself, or tryptophan's encounter with INMT going into 5-MeO DMT can be stopped. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. 5-MeO DMT is very powerful. Very powerful. But it's short acting. It's the stuff we get from frogs. It still isn't what we really want. We want this. Taking this will inhibit this enzyme. So that way we just have this experience and it stops here. Or the INMT can give us this experience after tryptophan, and then we get that, have something crazy, a very vivid dream, maybe we wake up after a short time. But another enzyme being present then converts this to what we really want, which is DMT, the long duration stuff, the hard working stuff we got to work. But This is what, especially with the pineal gland. The pineal gland allows this cascade to take place. Let's look at the structure for a moment. So I just talked about what this is. Harmaline, of course, in Arabic, we'll talk about religions later, harmal, right? We talk about harmal in Islam. I think I've got a post on this somewhere here. Maybe we'll get to it a little bit later. But harmal is important to the Islamic tradition. Now, it's not harmaline; it's pronounced harmal. Same word to me, if you ask me. And the things that are attributed to harmal in the Islamic tradition are amazing in terms of its relationship to DMT, to entheogens. So we'll talk about this is, of course, stuff that's in the Quran, right? In the surahs, right? Harmal and whatnot. But anyway, let's move on. Here's a picture of a tryptamine. Look at this. It's a hexagonal loop, and a tail. Serotonin, hexagonal loop, and a tail. And a small, I think it's a phosphate or oxygen group at the top. So you see how they're all the same, right? Tryptamine becomes this chemically. And now here we are. So we got serotonin, right? Tryptamine becomes serotonin. Over here becomes melatonin. What is melatonin? Look at this. Hexagon loop, a longer tail, and a phosphate group, and I think this is a carbon or a carbohydrate, a carbon molecule, or something like that. On top of that, I can't remember what it is. I think it's a carbon molecule. I think these are all white ones, are all carbon molecules. But same thing, right? The loop, and the tail, a bit longer for melatonin. But you see how the tryptamine structure is still there. It's still a tryptamine, just has extra things added onto it now. Oh, this is a phenomenal lecture, by the way. Yeah, I should probably click on that real quick. This page, I'll forward you guys a link if you want to see it, is amazing in terms of breaking down the chemical neuroscience of this stuff, right? But we'll digress and go back to where we're supposed to be. I just wanted to touch on that for a second. This lecture right here. Check it out when you have time. I'll forward it. But here's melatonin now, right? The hexagonal loop, the tail, the small tail, and now we have 5-MeO DMT, the frog stuff. Look, it's the same thing. Hexagonal loop, tail. Bit of a different tail, right? The oxygen group is gone, and the structure has changed a bit, right? The two carbon molecules are now over here, but same structure. Loop, tail. Same exact structure. And then now we get to the magic stuff. The magic stuff. Psilocybin. Look at psilocybin. Look at DMT. A tryptamine is what? A loop, and a tail. What is psilocybin? A loop, and a tail. If you knock off this phosphate group for just a second, right? Put your thumb on the phosphate group. Look at psilocybin and DMT. It's the exact same molecule. Now that we're here, what is so special about psilocybin? The psilocybin does what the DMT cannot, which is cross the blood-brain barrier. Because the DMT is open. And the MAO inhibitors that we talked about, this stuff, the monoamine oxidase, right? The stuff that prevents this cascade from going on can break this down easily. The MAO can find this molecule and tear it apart. It steals electrons from the nitrogen group, changing the structure, dismantling the tryptamine. But psilocybin is special. Psilocybin was engineered with this phosphate group on top. Now, when we ingest DMT, there is a reaction with an enzyme that takes place when we ingest DMT. It's a phosphate. It's I got to get the name of that a bit too nice to look at. But in any case, the phosphate group is knocked off by the enzyme that takes the, phosphates are what we use to produce energy, right? We use phosphates to produce energy, right? ADP or ATP is the human compound that provides us with energy to live, to breathe, to live life, right? Cells use ATP. It doesn't see triphosphate. So when phosphate enters the body, the cells take it off of the psilocybin and use it for what they use phosphates for, creating energy, of course, which leaves psilocybin with this small little knob on top. Just the circle, the oxygen group. That's it. Phosphates are gone through the process of metabolism when we digest it, and psilocybin is left. Now it's called psilocin, and all it has is this little dot on the top. The loop, the tail, and this one little dot, because the P and the P group stuff is gone. Give you a picture of psilocin. I have one here. May not, but psilocin basically becomes this. Psilocybin becomes this. It's got this one little group, this little dot, circle. Here it is. Now, they don't show this, but each of these little carbon molecules has a hydrogen group attached to it. This is just showing the basic structure of tryptamines, but there's also hydrogens popping off of all these little carbon things here. So there's a hydrogen group and this little circle right here, which is oxygen group. Here it is right here. Right here it is the loop, and the tail, the loop, and the tail. And what happens when the body knocks off this P phosphate group is that all you're left with is this hydrogen group. And this hydrogen group has a very powerful affinity for this nitrogen group right here. Right here. And what happens is, as you can see in this video, the hydrogen and oxygen actually form a closed loop pattern after you ingest the mushroom. Boom, right there, just like this. And now it's a loop, and a third loop. You see, it's always two loops and a tail, right? Two loops and a tail. Two loops and a tail. Two loops and a tail. But now this tail disappears because it loops. This makes a loop. Let me see if I can draw this and y'all can see it a little better. Right here, it loops like this. Bang. And now the monoamine, I should actually, the monoamine, let's pretend these little dots are the enemy, right? They're the monoamine. Here, put it in red color. These little dots right here, these guys, this is the monoamine oxidase. It wants to get up in there so it can break down the tryptamine by taking away the electrons from this end right here, but it can't because psilocybin has stopped it. Psilocybin is structured so that when it enters the body, the phosphate group is knocked off, and what remains of it, psilocin, loops with the end of the tail, forming a barrier and flipping the molecule around so that way MAO cannot get inside. Kaboom. And now you have the experience unbroken by the MAO, and the DMT can now cross the blood-brain barrier without being destroyed. And that is how psilocybin works. That is what is so special and unique about psilocybin. You don't have to add another entity, another compound to stop the monoamine oxidase, like ayahuasca or the acacia brew or anything else. You brew it with something that stops the red dots from breaking down the tryptamine, because the psilocybin itself puts a roadblock, because it's sentient, it's intelligent, it knows what it wants to do. So although chemically it's the same as DMT, the structure is different. Psilocybin provides the exact same delivers the exact same chemicals in a different structure, so that way our bodies can't destroy it. And that's why it's so special and unique. It's the only thing in nature that does that. And so moving on from understanding, now that we have an understanding of what it is chemically, molecularly, that makes it so special, let's look at some of the early experience with it, because now we want to know, okay, so I get the chemical stuff. I get the symbols, I get the chemical stuff, I get some of the religious stuff, which I know we're going to dive into more afterward. I get the brain stuff. But what about the safety stuff? Is it safe? So this is a study from a long time ago. I can't remember the exact year, 97, yeah, that looked at dosages. Very low dose versus medium dose versus high dose. Now, this is their version of a high dose. This doesn't even come anywhere close to the stuff that we'll be talking about 2 classes from now when we do the workshop on how you would go about producing this stuff yourself if you wanted to. But still, it's scaled for them, right? For their science. And so basically, neither electromagnetic graph, so EKG, nor body temperature was affected at any dose. Blood pressure moderately elevated only at 60 minutes, and diastolic pressure elevated only at 90 minutes after a high dose. Understandable. The endocrine measures basically show that although there are changes, there's nothing harmful. Nothing harmful happens to any of the levels that they look at in terms of endocrine. Endocrines are hormones, right? Endocrine glands produce hormones, right? So TSH, ACTH, cortisol levels elevated at high dose, but nothing dangerous is happening at high dose. Confirmation of already known favorable safety profile of psilocybin. Moving on further, this is the main purpose. LD50 basically looks at how much of a substance you'd have to feed 100 rats before it kills 50 of them. Obviously, rats and humans have very similar sort of physiological processes, which is in organs, which is why they use mice for human studies, right? But the point is, in order to kill yourself with psilocybin, you have to eat your body weight. It's got a very, very low or high, I guess you'd say, LD50. Ratio 6:41 compared with aspirin or nicotine. So on a relative scale, you have to take, I guess, it's 3 times as safe as aspirin, basically. More than that. So we're thinking about or nicotine, which we associate nicotine with cigarettes, but nicotine is not cigarettes. Nicotine is in cigarettes, which is addictive, but it's not the nicotine in cigarettes causing the problem. That's what's getting us addicted to cigarettes, which cigarettes are the problem. But you compare it with anything over the table, and it's way, 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 way safer. You have to eat your own body weight in one sitting to just a toxic dose. Probably still wouldn't kill you, but of course, if you eat your body weight, if you ate 200 pounds of anything, you'd be dead, which is the point. So psilocybin can't harm you physically. It is not physically dangerous, although psychologically is another story altogether. Okay, we're open to questions, and what we're going to do next time is we're going to start by looking at a research paper called "Getting High with the Most High," looking at the prevalence of entheogens, different entheogens in the Torah Tanakh. We've been some rearranging in the house. So I seem to have lost my Torah ran away. I have no idea where my Tanakh is. I'm sure I'll find it by the next class we have. But anyway, we look at some research papers, right, which are going to investigate some of the instances of entheogen use and entheogen ritual in the Torah, particularly. Before we go on looking at other uses that we will find in the New Testament and stuff like that, we're going to start with the Torah because that's the book that we're all familiar with. That's the book that we are often quoting in terms of not only debate, but also our own Moorish history, right? Looking at Moab and Ruth and Lot, that sort of stuff. The Old Testament matters. There's a lot of information in there about entheogen use. And of course, you have all these different groups who have sort of benefited from Noble Drew Lee's movement, right? The Hebrew Israelites, the NOI, whoever the case may be. They all want to say that we're different, right? Hebrew Israelites will say, well, we're only Torah Tanakh. We're not Moorish. But like even their own, of course, the Torah is our book too, but I'm just saying, even the book that they claim is what makes their camp more correct than other camps, says the same stuff, man. Says it puts the same emphasis and importance on Islamism as its esoteric practice being entheogenic as any of the other books of literature you can look at. They've got entheogenic recipes in the Torah Tanakh. They've got entheogens in there. These are what, these are what the experts who spend their life looking at this stuff say. So we're gonna look at some of those research papers and break down the presence of entheogens in the Torah Tanakh. And then we're going to also, if we have time, get into the special religion, which is Christianity. Not that it's special in terms of its practice, but it's special in terms of its placement, because it deals with Rome, and we're still dealing with Rome. And the early Christians who were Gnostics, that is Yahshua and the Gnostics is sort of the converging point, where our natural practices were most revived and most at stake, because now you have big states, powerful states, which are coming to sort of cut this stuff out of the awareness of the common people and to cut this stuff out of the religious culture. And also it's very prevalent because you have small groups which are once again propagating this information. So Christianity is unique as a time period for entheogens in terms of what we're dealing with today with the state of Rome, right? And all this nonsense happening out here with the colonialists and whatnot. So we're going to touch on the Torah Tanakh and hopefully on the many instances of Christianity's very explicit ties to entheogens. All right, so Cujo, we're good, man. That's pretty long. It's about an hour and a half, or 50 minutes. Let's open the floor to questions and do the usual, man. You dig?
Floor. Honors for that, yo. Anybody got any questions, just put it in the chat in all caps. We'll get it on the screen.
Yeah.
And you'll definitely get your answers. But as you know, you usually go in, yo, so these Moors usually don't have too much because you hit every nail on the head.
Islam, I hope so. We want to get specific, man, because you always get people saying, "Oh, well, Noble Julie talked about Jesus," or they'll say something like, "Well, okay, well, the NOI is always pushing this black stuff and et cetera," and they'll sort of make excuses as to why the prophets or the people who some groups perceive to be prophets are pushing things that we need to get rid of, But the thing is that obviously these prophets were aware of where our people were mentally at that time, and these prophets are totally aware. You know what I'm saying? Prophet Muhammad was totally aware of Noble Drew Ali. He said it himself. Same with Elijah Muhammad. And Noble Drew Ali in the same was totally aware of the entheogenic origins of Islamism, because he was in Kemet himself. But of course, you're dealing with how do you relay this information to a people so that, first of all, they don't run away, and second of all, they can keep discovering things you brought as time goes on, right? So we want to get as specific as possible, man, Islam, because the Prophet knew everything, man. The Prophet laid it all out for us to continue learning and discovering. And so we want to be able to protect the many different symbols and things the Prophet brought us by understanding how this stuff works ourselves, because our own families and whatnot, when you tell people, well, entheogens and that their religion comes from mushrooms, how are they going to take that? You got to be able to articulate what that means a little bit more, right? When they come across this information.
You got that one on the screen?
Let me check it. Can I use it as while doing a master cleanse? What is a master cleanse exactly? Because usually if you're doing a cleanse, you're not eating. Usually a cleanse is usually a fast. So in that case, a fast on psychedelics, let's say you were to fast for 24 hours and then take a high dose, brother or sister, I don't know if that's something that you are ready to do unless you've been practicing it for a while, man, because on an empty stomach, a high dose will hit you very, very powerfully and very, very quickly. So yes, you can, but it will be, that's the sort of, those are the sort of places that our priests used to go. We have dark rooms in Kemet, right, in the pyramids and whatnot, and all these sort of places, and that's what, or caves, and that's what the priests would do. These guys, their only job was psilocybin, so they would take a high dose after fasting in these dark places, and that's when they got the crazy information that they came up with. And also they had the privacy, of course, to freak out if they needed to. But those high dose trips are no joke after a fast. So of course you can, but maybe you start with a lower dose and work your way up, like we're practicing the workshops later, because it'll be pretty intense. Yeah, I was gonna say I fasted for 2 days and then did a session. It was great. That's awesome that he had that experience. Yeah, I've never been able to classify my own experiences with psilocybin as great. I definitely would say they've been profound and eye-opening and life-changing, but great in terms of like being enjoyable or pleasant, absolutely positively not, especially at the higher dose. So I can only imagine fasting for 2 days and then doing a trip. It would take a lot of preparedness for me sitting on the couch thinking about my life before I bit down on those shrooms. I'd be sitting. I just sit there, I think to myself, oh shit, here we go again. Okay, all right. Once you start, there's no going back.
No turning back.
There's no turning back now. Okay, so all right, I guess I'll just take a first bite, and then I just, after about 15 minutes, usually it takes me to take the first handful, and they're awful. Then I just say, well, it's too late. I'm already in now. But usually I have a few minutes where I'm sitting there thinking about my life. I can only imagine that the fasting for 2 days what I would do to myself. Yeah. But yeah, low dose, I would say, before the high ones. Gonna have the most highest fire. Yeah, it's a good paper, man. There's so many. The thing is, there's so many. I have to choose the ones that are relatable to specific things we're talking about in class. But there were so many research papers on this stuff. It's like, where do we begin, right? Which is good because we'll have a lot to look at over the curriculum, right? I mean, it's an unlimited amount of information looking at the entheogens and the scriptures. The Torah is just one scripture, but they're everywhere, and all sorts of scriptures, right? Everywhere, man. So we'll have fun looking at this stuff over the next few months and whatnot.
I was building with somebody earlier on before the session about trips, and we were talking about seeing Sri Yantras and mandalas.
Okay.
Is that also
Okay, so Cujo, I'm so glad you asked that question. I don't know if you guys remember our first lecture. It was 2 parts. The second part of the lecture, we talked about the shapes of shared between Buddhism and sort of the yogic and Hindustan tradition, and the mandalas and the Buddhas and the magic carpets. Aladdin and the magic carpet and the genie. What color was the genie, Cujo? What color was he?
the genie?
In Aladdin. Remember Aladdin? Aladdin, the magic lamp, right? Rubs the lamp, and the genie comes out. What color was the genie?
Blue or purple or something?
Blue, exactly. Same as Krishna, right? Because the magic carpets are part of this paradigm.
Yeah.
You look at them, you take a high dose, and you would go into the carpet. That was the concept. The carpets and the mandalas are actual places. It's basically you hyperdimensionalize the images in the mandalas, so they go from 2D to being 3D, and then you enter them, and those are whole other worlds that you would enter, and that was the whole magic carpet paradigm, the flying carpet and that sort of thing. So mandalas, magic carpets, yes, absolutely, 100% are an integral part of the entheogenic Islamism paradigm. Because when Hindustan was the melanated center of the world, that was what was going on, man.
Now, what just hit me, because I was thinking about it, was all the motifs on the Alhambra and all that, all the designs, all the wall stuff.
Islam, exactly. Exactly. It's like psychedelic artwork, right?
Yeah.
You see a lot, and Islam is probably like every religion has their psychedelic thing. You know what I'm saying? Some are the actual scriptures, some are the artwork. Christianity is both, which is why I say it's kind of unique as a converging point. But largely, it's art, and Islamic art is psychedelic as hell. Moss, aren't they mushrooms? They look like mushrooms to me. You know, they're what's the shape of the top of the moss, right? Are always that sort of dome shape,
Dome, yeah.
space, right? Very,
Yeah.
very common looking at moss, and that is that is in the literature looking at entheogens in the human evolution history. That is a very prominent motif. Is the dome-shaped architecture, Moorish architecture being in reference to psychedelics, and of course the artwork in terms of the actual art, the colors, the shapes. There's all sacred geometry, right, Cujo? You know what I'm saying? Sacred geometry, basically.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking about. And then
yeah.
but the Stay Silent just said in the chat, the carpet, the praying on the carpet.
Islam. You see what I'm saying? Because it's esoteric, but they make it exoteric by turning the esoteric into a ritual. So now you're praying on the carpet toward the sun, right? Towards Ra, right? Praying on the carpet towards the sun, and having the experience move from something that you experience yourself, being inside the carpet, to paying homage to the experience outside the carpet. You know what I'm saying? Paying homage to it with words and prayer, as opposed to actually living it. That's the exoteric versus esoteric difference. So praying on the magic carpet, bro, Islam, that's exactly what it is, man. They pray on it. We used to go inside of it. We used to go inside of it.
Yeah. And then that's what somebody else said, the whole genie with the bottle.
Yes.
You're actually becoming the genie.
Islam.
Like you're
Islam
and being the genie, and the bottle is the world.
Yeah.
The genie.
And there's the lamp is also
the
motif. You know what I'm saying? It just, we haven't gotten there yet because there's so many books to go through, but I've got a book on chalices, basically the Holy Grail. That's an entheogenic motif because the Amanita muscaria mushroom folds upward like a cup, and you can drink out of it. And people do drink out of it. And the water they drink out of it is red. And when it rains, the mushroom holds the water like a cup, and it's red, of course. So there's a lot of different motifs in terms of like items, and the lamps but we'll get that. But yeah, so it's everywhere. We should be looking at it. You know, it all links up. Exactly, it all links up. Stay Silent gets it. It all links up. Crossing their arms as well before they bow down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Wakanda forever. They said it's not Wakanda forever. You know, it's Asar, right? It's homage to Asar in its mushroom form. So yeah, man, all this stuff ties in, and it's just amazing the connections that you make once you begin to get into it, right?
Yeah.
Because like once you do it, you're in it forever. You know, you're in it forever. There's no way out.
Yeah.
Once you do those doses.
That too, like once you go there, once you go there and you become open, you can't close.
Islam, you can't close really again.
You're seeing it in every. Yeah, you're just seeing it in every. It's everywhere now.
You know, you can lie to other people, but you can't lie about what your own experiences. You know, it's going to shape you because it's something that happened. You can't take it out of your life. It's information, like anything else. And so, you once you're open, you can't close, and you begin to receive stuff. Like I said, psilocybin it's a symbiote with our DNA, and it's looking for a host. It recognizes you. It's like an old friend. It will recognize you from the moment you take it to long afterward. I told you I might go for a long absence. I went for I forget how long it was, maybe like 8 months one time without a trip. I went back to it and said, look what you did. It said, first of all, hello. Basically, welcome back. I took a smaller dose thinking that would protect me, but it's like you're not going to be protected by a smaller dose because we're gonna run off this small dose that you just took, and continue where we left off, basically, because you haven't been back here. We're supposed to be. And it's a very personal sort of relationship that you have with the psilocybin after a time, which is cool. It's cool you can come back to it like that, you know, and it teaches you as you're ready to hear it, as you're ready to receive it, basically.
Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember if I asked this before. You answered it or not, but about the one of my deterrents is tripping, but also tripping while having this nausea from the shrooms.
Yeah,
and
it tastes terrible.
No, well, I've been having the nausea for the whole trip.
Yeah, I've had an experience where I was nauseous. Yeah, I honestly, Cujo, I don't know, but I'll tell you this. So when you take it, like, are you obviously, how much water are you drinking when you eat the mushrooms?
Like I've tried it without water, with water, without food, with food, like eating hours before, eating minutes before, drinking it hot, drinking it cold, you know, having it like soup in water, just put it in water, let it, you know, simmer in the water a little bit and just gulp everything. No matter what. The only time I never got nausea was when I had it in the chocolate. But the trip wasn't as high.
Powerful. It wasn't powerful, yeah.
Yeah, the trip wasn't as high.
Yeah, I would say two. I would say number one, try it on mostly a fast that day.
Yeah,
you know, that day. So you wake up in the morning, you don't really eat that day. Maybe have like some light stuff in the morning, but then you know there's a long break, 10 hours or so between the experiences. Number two, try it with honey. Something about honey.
I never thought of
the mushroom work together very, very well. It seems, I don't know what it is about the coating of the stomach, but they seem to interact very, very well together. Maybe because they're familiar, right? We talked about honey and psilocybin. Maybe psilocybin remembers. Yeah, it doesn't taste as horrible because sometimes the taste, Cujo, lingers. So you can still taste it. It's the mushrooms in your teeth, below your tongue, in your teeth. That's why sometimes after I eat them, I went to the washroom. I do a full rinse. I rinse my mouth, I floss, I brush my teeth. The flavor is completely out, and then I don't feel as nauseous because sometimes, even if I smell psilocybin, Cujo, you're a mushroom, brother. If I smell a mushroom, or if I taste it, I feel nauseous, man.
Yeah,
like it got worse after I began experimenting with psilocybin because you eat so much of it. You eat so much of it, it creates an aversion to the smell or taste. So I found that when I have a clean mouth and I can't taste it at all during the experience, I don't feel the nausea. Honey also helps, especially.
Yeah, I never thought about the honey, and I never thought about that it could be the taste of it, not necessarily the ingestion of it.
Yeah, I think it's the taste, man. Because I've told you, I've been on this pretty vulnerable on these classes. I had a throw-up experience that was it was so bad. I wish I could tell you how bad the throw-up experience was because I had a protein shake not long before. Yeah, I did that. Dumb, like a chocolate one not long before. I had a whole bunch of them where it was still in my stomach. It mixed with the water. It came back up into my mouth. Right, I had to get rid of some of it, and then I had to eat them again because I lost a bunch. And then it just stayed in my mouth for a whole trip, and it was a deep trip. And I just remember I just felt sick the whole time.
Yeah,
I felt sick the whole time, and it was psychologically challenging.
Yeah, that's how it was the whole every time I've had a trip, the trip is crazy, but all through the thing there was this nausea the whole way, like all the way nausea. And it's like, yo, why is the nausea
so,
why am I tripping and seeing stuff and thinking about why am I nauseous and shit?
Yeah, that's like it takes away from your ability to be calm and receive information. So I would do those things. The honey, the long fast beforehand, and cleaning your mouth, bro. Clean all that shit out. That way, it's not present, and that helped me a lot. I've had experience with that, which it was horrible. Yeah.
No, I seen another question too. I seen
I
some.
I saw some too. Do mediums use shrooms? Yes. Some of them use entheogens, and that you can look that up in the book by Carlos Castaneda, a separate reality. They talk about going down to see shamans and whatnot in Mexico, and this is the stuff that they were using, right? This was stuff they were using. So of course, and it depends on where you are in the world, where you have access to. But mediums may use shrooms. Maybe they don't use it at the moment they're giving information, but surely a lot of them have had encounters with the dead. You can go to the land of the dead with this stuff. This is what we're talking. We're dealing with ancestors, right? You can go and see ancestors at high enough doses and experience that stuff. And of course, that ties you in. Once, like we just said, once you're open to that, you can't close. You can't close. So you will continue to receive that stuff for the rest of your life, right? So Master Clean talked a lot about visiting his deceased people that he loved, his master and his wife, using empty. They would meet up. He said he'd meet up regularly on the spiritual plane after high dose entheogens. So it was regular. Yeah.
You got that one on the screen?
Let me read. Clean sweat. The black seed oil or the question?
No, the question. Have you ever used someone else's spiritual reading?
Have I ever used someone else's? Yes, I have. You ever used to give? No. You used to give. No. Never for that. I use it only for exploring consciousness. That's why I use it, to explore consciousness and to understand self, right? Self-mastery, understanding self, where I myself come from, and as recurring subjective proof that there is something more. Because all of us get caught up in life. You know, we got bills to pay, we got kids to raise, we got lovers to love, we have businesses to run, we have jobs that we hate, you know, that we have to go to support our families. We have jobs that we love that are still very stressful. We have death all around us. We have life in our face all the time. And when you're caught up all the time in 5 sense reality, you forget that you were more than 5 sense reality. It's easy to forget. It's like you need to sleep. Why do we sleep? We don't know why. We don't know why. Calories are for energy, so we don't know why we sleep. But we can deduce that it's to tie us back into something based on what happens during sleep. So we have these experiences, we have these religions which help to keep us aware that physical reality is not the ultimate reality. You know, it's an important part of who we are as humans, to be aware that we're not just physical, right? We came down. We're not just physical. We're more than physical. We don't just die. Nothing dies. And these experiences, we practice this as our religion to keep us in constant reminder of that. You know, things get tough in life, but this is just one small part of life. It's not the whole thing. It's not even a speck of the whole thing. You know, and we'll be off somewhere else next.
Yeah. Oh, and have you ever gone to sleep while you were tripping?
Okay, so the thing is, you cannot go to sleep. Now I'll tell you, it doesn't mean you don't sleep. What it means is that you are conscious the whole time, because psilocybin is CNS arousal. Remember, we talked about its role as an aphrodisiac. It's a very, very powerful central nervous system arousal. So you can take a whole bunch of it and fall asleep, for example, before it hits you, but then you'll be conscious of it. And it will wake you up and knock you out, and wake you up and knock you out, but you're not really sleeping because you're aware of the experience the whole time. You might fall asleep, you know, for example, you take 20 grams, you lie down, there's a latent period. You might fall asleep during the latent period, you know, latent period, you're waiting for it to kick in. But then once it kicks in, you're conscious, you're aware again, you know what I'm saying? Whereas sleep is unconscious. You don't remember when you're sleeping. If you're dreaming or on psilocybin, you remember.
Islam.
Islam.
Well, looks like that's a wrap. Another great session.
Beautiful. All honors to the Asiatic woman in Islam. Yeah. Yeah. Great session. Great session to my family of Moors. Then are we good? Could you miss any questions? Are we straight?
Yeah, we're straight. We're straight.
All right.
Straight now.
All right. So I guess we'll pick up in a couple weeks. Right, Cujo? You want to do it bi-weekly? Is that better?
Yeah, goes either it was just with the
Okay,
scheduling.
okay.
You know, I
Okay.
finished early enough today.
Okay, see. Islam.
So I was here for 6. So once I could be at the domicile for 5:30, so we could go for 6, then we'll go. So we'll just confirm the night before and the daytime or something.
Sounds good. All right, so either it'll be next week or the week after. We'll finish off this section of the lesson plan by looking at the religions and the scriptures containing in use, and then the class after that, we're actually going to do a workshop, guys. So get your pens and pencils out, and I'm going to take you guys through the PF Tech, and we're going to talk about, we're going to go through the protocols, how you would grow this stuff yourself if you wanted to do that. And I use it, like I said, a system that's pretty much fail-proof. It produced a little bit less volume, but pretty much fail-proof, and you can be poor as hell and still get it done. You don't have to have anything fancy at all. Yeah. Just a tote box. You buy some gardening stuff, some perlite. You buy some basically brown rice flour. You buy some vermiculite. You go to Canadian Tire, buy all this stuff for nothing. It costs you nothing to buy it, really. You buy some nails, some mason jars, and you get the work done, man. You know what I'm saying? You get the work done in a couple of days, and then all you do after that is you just sit back and wait for 7 weeks, and it grows itself. And yeah, high output and easy to do, but not like simple to do, but not easy to do because it does take a bit of practice, and it's kind of messy. And everyone's busy in life. Who wants to take, I don't know, 3, 6, 12 hours boiling water and mixing brown rice flour and who wants to do that shit, it's not difficult to do. My very first attempt at producing cakes, psilocybin cakes, capable of sprouting psilocybin, was successful. My very, very first, as a total rookie, off a ghetto ass DVD that Master Clindy sent me. You know what I'm saying? So it's not difficult at all, but it is time consuming. It is a lot. It is work, but simple enough. Just right?
There's some green thumb Moors in here with gardens and all that, so they'll be all in for that.
Well, they'll probably be better off than me because they probably have the capacity to produce a lot more. You know what I'm saying? The PF Tech is somewhat limited. Maybe for example, on a really good PF Tech, I'll get. What happens is they'll grow, then they'll stop growing. You gotta hydrate. You gotta soak them in water to hydrate them, the cakes again. Pull them out, put them aside. They grow some more. Okay, then they hydrate them again. They grow some more. After about 2 or 3 of those flushes, we call them, then they don't grow anymore. You got to restart. But maybe you'll get how many? Maybe you'll get 30 grams, 30 dried grams. So that's 300 actual grams of the entity on your first flush. Right? Pretty big number. 30 grams. Pretty big number. Then you put it back in the water, comes back out. Maybe you get 25. Maybe you get 35. And then by the end of the whole session, maybe you have 80 or 90 dried grams, and that'll most people aren't doing 20 grams a dose a trip. They're working out. Most people are doing 5 to 7. So if you do one a month, it lasts you 10, 11 months, right? If you do one every 2 months, it lasts you 2 years. You know what I'm saying? So it lasts you a long time. But this is Canada, at least for me and for Cujo. So you can't really grow them in the freezing cold that well. They're best in the summertime. So the window for growing them is kind of small when it's cold out. They don't grow as prolifically. So anyway, we'll talk about the details of that 2 classes for now. But that's going to be the structure moving forward. Don't take a brief hiatus and go back to the beginning with the symbol stuff. Yeah.
All right, bro. Give thanks again.
If not, no, thanks to y'all, man. Thanks to y'all for having me up. And as always, I'm open to personal stories, and any of you can reach out to me anytime with questions and stuff. And I'm happy to forward the studies and research papers to you guys anytime. So just let me know.
Peace and love, Morris.
Peace and love. Islam.
Sounds like it's having a hallucinogenic effect. Not like a drug, which is harmful and wrong, and just say no, kids. But spacey nonetheless.
Have you ever heard a thought that you saw, or felt the pain from third eye to your jaw? Felt schizo, brain circuit strip so, got me seeing strobe lights like a disco. Under skin crawls, seeing one take shapes out of the norm, demonic forms takes. Forces external, stress is extreme, eyes wide open, though it's a dream. It seems sorta like alienation, surrounded by aliens at a PlayStation. Nerd impulses, feeling pulses or noses, suffering from tripped out psychosis. Doses, seeing clouds drip like ET, sun rays touch fingertips, reflect kiss off your cheek like lips, repeating like skips, peeling the air in strips, pattern swirl, walls seem to breathe, mixed up senses that I can't perceive. All I see is sounds, I'm hearing what smells, I'm craving hallucinations like hell. Enter the realm where there's talking gazelles, speaking metaphysic, I'm feeling depressed. Fez wearing horn, puts his hand on my chest and says, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe out, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe out, breathe out. All I did was have a piece of a shroom. My mind going zoom as I spin with this room. Forks run with spoons, knives guilty for murders they committed. Should I be committed to a mental ward? Straight jacket fitted. Frog walks out the wall talking ribbit. I'm overstanding every word said in my head. Then here comes death, smelling like dead, telling me to follow him flying on fog. On his death log he checks off guard. Looking into his hood, darkness all I see, and darkness is all around me. Light asks me to take a west sound beat, then introduce me to speed of thought, and she told me by being told man knows not. Carrying on, swinging like Barry Bonds. The flower bouquet from whence he'd married yawns. Rapper's frost was a corpse. Power and force, divorced of course. Power is an illusion, took the bigger loss. My last 4 blinks felt like ice rinks. Came to my senses looking down sinks. After that I didn't know what to think, so I just put the rest of shrooms into my drink. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out. The trip is a trip.